Hello, this is John Montroy from Developer Force, and in this screencast I'm going to show you how to call into the force.com Web Services API from Java. To help make more sense of logging in, realize that when you log in using a browser, you actually log in at login.salesforce.com, and then after you've logged in, you actually get redirected to a different server. In this case, I've been redirected to na6.salesforce.com. So there's this whole notion of logging in at a central point and then being redirected to a different server for additional functionality. We'll see this reflected in the Java code as well. To fetch the WSDL, log into your developer environment, go to Setup, then go down to Develop, then API, and there you'll see the Enterprise WSDL, which is the one we'll use. Simply download that file, and we'll use that file and feed it into Apache to generate the Java stubs, which we can then call. We're now ready to generate some Java. Before we start though, we have to set up our Apache Access 1.4 environment, in this case including the Access jars, the WSDL for Java jar, and other libraries such as the activation jar. Once we have those in our class path, we're ready to execute the WSDL to Java application. In this case, we use the -a argument. We pass in the parameter which is the WSDL file we downloaded in the previous step, and now when you execute that a few seconds later, a number of Java files will be generated, about 115 or so, and these are the ones that we can now start using to access the force.com Web Services API. I'm using Eclipse here, but you can use your favorite Java editor. I'm simply creating a new project, and within this project I'm going to go and grab the source code we just generated. I'm dragging that across, which effectively does an import. And as you'll see that it doesn't actually compile, and it doesn't compile because it doesn't have access to the Apache libraries we just used to generate the files. So I'm going to add a library, in this case a user library I've established earlier, which points to those same Apache libraries that we saw. And now as you can see, everything compiles nicely, and we're ready to generate some code, or write some code rather. We're now ready to write some Java code, and what we're going to do is write a simple Java class. It simply instantiates itself, and then it calls two methods, a login and a search. And we're just adding search just to show that the login actually does perform some operations. And as said earlier, we're going to not write any exception handling. We're going to need three constants, the username and the password obviously, and because we're logging in from outside our trusted environment, a token which we have to append to our password. We're now ready to start writing code. I'm going to create one variable here called soap binding stub, or rather of type soap binding stub, and this is a generated stub, and this will serve as our access point to the Web Services API. What we can do then is use the S4 service locator class to generate an instance of this soap binding stub, and then we can actually log in just using our username and password. As you can see, it's pretty simple. Remember how we logged in earlier to a central server? Well, the same thing happens here. When you use the S4 service locator, you log into the central server. After you log in, you get a login result, and from that login result, you can actually retrieve the server URL of the server you should log into, or rather interact with, afterwards. And this is what this piece of code does. It grabs its server URL, it puts it into a session header, and attaches that session header to the binding variable, which we can use for all future interactions with that new server. So to check that everything's working, let's write a little simple query. This query does some SOQL. It selects the first name and last name from the contact persistent object. If we have a result, we iterate over the contacts and we print out the first name and last name. So here we go, running the application, and here's the result showing all the first names and last names. The Force.com Web Services Developer Guide on Developer Force has a great little quick start tutorial, and we actually use this tutorial as a basis for the screencast. It shows you how to set up your Apache Access environment, how to download the WSDL, and it also gives you a great set of code as well. We don't follow the code exactly, we avoid all the exception handling, but this is a great place to learn more. This screencast shows you how to authenticate against the force.com Web Services API using Java. It shows how to download the WSDL, generate Java stubs using Apache Access, and log into the Force.com platform and perform a query. Good luck!